People are always scared of new things. If you want to make something happen that hasn't happened before, you've got to allow yourself to make a lot of mistakes. Then the real magic will happen. Because if you just play it really safe, you won't get any treats. I come from Iceland, and this harbour is probably my roots, you know, and the weather and the mountains. For me, this is the heart of Reykjavik. I never try to do things that are Icelandic, you know. I don't sort of go out my way. Just the fact that like all my family 1,000 years back are Icelandic, and I was born here with all those things inside me, and with that face and this body, you know, and with these influences, I think that's enough. I don't have to. It's so much subconsciously there. I don't have to focus on it consciously as well. But yeah, there is a big chunk there.
Again and again, people come to the front who are so clever and so intelligent, the way they work their way through the music that they love to make music that we'll remember for a long time. And one of them is Bjork. She recorded her first album when she was 12 years old, and she was trained in classical music, and she led a rock band which was playing rock music when she was again a teenager. And all that's useful in the sense of knowing that she had this double background. But most important of all, curious enough, was Iceland, the place in which she was brought up. And very self-consciously, out of her Icelandic inheritance, out of all those geysers and all that supposed isolation and all that bit adrift in the North Atlantic and the heroes that came to Iceland and the great sagas that happened there and so on, out of that, she's made a unique personality for herself and drawn from that tradition a sound which is hers, entirely hers, and brought to the world the Icelandic sound, the one and only Bjork.
Well, I always sang since I was a kid. It has always been like my natural reaction to things. My stepfather, who started with my mother when I was 4, and he played me a lot of music and had a lot of time for me. And he used to sit with me every evening sometimes. And we would write down a lot of lyrics, we'd go through things, we'd pick up the chords. And he used to be in a top 40 band in Iceland. They sent me to classical music school when I was 5, and I was there for 10 years. It was very conservative, but I was a bit of a rebel. That's how I got introduced to like Chessay Stockhouse and electronic music. You know, I basically got introduced to all music there is. I mean, in European, at least, let's say 400 or 500 years. And even though I ended up deciding that majority of it was not maybe my cup of tea, at least I knew it existed. So I could like say, okay, I've dealt with this, you know?
Bjork does seem like a one-off to me, partly because she's from Iceland, I have to say. There are other bands, obviously, and musicians who come out of Iceland. Sigurðson is the band that comes straight to mind. But Bjork is different because she's a woman. That's very important, I think. And because she is really experimental. So she moves between lots of different sounds and arts and kind of even nature, you know, in a way that very few artists, male or female, do, really.
Iceland was a colony for 600 or 700 years, and it was treated very badly by the Danish. And we were not allowed to play music and dance. It was supposed to be an act from the devil or something. And so what we got obsessed with was storytelling and the sagas, you know. That's all our culture is basically literature, very literature-based. Probably the most important music in Iceland was half talking and half singing, kind of chanting.
Hreiðrum ganga fuglar frá, flöktan dranga bjarga, sólarvanga syngja hjá, sálma langa og marga. Björk, she uses her voice in a very specific way. There is a specific sound in her voice. And you can say the same about the the voice of the old Icelandic choirmen who were reciting the rímur. It's not a singing voice, not exactly. It's not a speaking voice. It's somewhere in between.
While you are away, my heart comes undone, slowly unravels.
I think her voice is incredibly recognisable, which is really important in pop. You can have a fantastic voice but not be a great pop voice. And you can have a kind of slightly dodgy voice and it be a great pop voice, because what you need to do is convey emotion, which she does very well, but also it be completely yours. And everybody knows what Bjork sounds like. And she sounds weirdly operatic but weirdly normal, so she'll be saying something, you know, almost like kind of the way that she writes lyrics sound like she's speaking, you know, but she sings them in this kind of mad operatic way.
When you come back, we'll have to make new love, never returning, and you'll never returning. So when you come back, we'll have to make new love. I had been making music like for theatre, for film, like pop stuff, jazz stuff, experimental stuff, electronic stuff. Basically try everything, basically work with everybody in Iceland, but always with other people's visions. I moved to London to make my own album. It was time for me then to write songs about me. I was 27. I thought, okay, you know, you're a coward if you don't try more things. It was a very big decision to move, mostly because of my son, and I'm a really family-orientated person. When I came to London, I was very looking, and I was very sure that I was gonna do an album that hadn't been done before. So the people I was most attracted to, and the scene I was most attracted to when I came here, was people who knew as little as I did about what was going to happen. Not people that had already established things, but people that were still trying to sort of entering the unknown, if you want, and trying to discover something that hadn't been discovered before. London is gorgeous because it functions as a brewing pot for people from all over the planet on similar missions to me. And if I don't talk to them regularly and I don't see them play regularly, I just go mad.
It's very tempting to think of Bjork as indie pixie girl, you know, dip, dip, dip. But actually, she knows what she's doing. You know, she absolutely knows what she's doing. She's completely musical. She knows what she wants. And so she will collaborate with people. If it doesn't work, she just won't use it. She's a bit like a scientist, isn't she? She's interested in kind of experimentation. She wants to see where she can take herself. And so, of course, that leads her to working with all sorts of people.
This is one from Germany, which is the guy's called Dynamo, which is really, really cool. It's kind of like on that Herbert sort of tip.
Just obsessed with people with exciting ideas, and it's a bit of a weakness of mine, really. I've got no interest in working with people who do what I tell them to do. You know, it's just no point. I might as well just do it myself then. So I'd much rather work with people who are just as strong as me and preferably stronger. And so it's like I give 9 billion and they give 9 billion or whatever, and that's the kick.
In 1993, Bjork released Debut, her first solo album of original work. It turned her into an international star. She followed with a second album, Post, in 1995, and then moved to southern Spain, where she recorded her third album.
When I did Debut and Post, they were very much like greatest hits of my musical passions for all my life. And I knew it would take 2 albums to do that. That's why I called them Debut and Post, before and after, of getting rid of the back catalogue almost, you know, gracefully, you know, because you can only move on if you do that, you know. So this is like a fresh start for me. And that's why I want to call this album homogenic or genus or genius or whatever. I'm still working on that, because it's one flavor. It's just me now, you know, here, and it's going to be, instead of like all these different instruments, it's just going to be beats, strings, and voice. Líka, þú veist, ef einhvern tíma myndavélina fara í taugarnar á okkur, þá látið mig vita, af því að þetta númer 1. I knew that this album would be like back to Iceland, sort of what I'm about. But it's very hard to kind of start from complete scratch with no tradition whatsoever. But there were some pioneers who were trying to look at the landscape and the country and try to change that, what they saw and what they felt into audio. To find that voice is very challenging, you know. And it's almost like you have to invent your own roots. And that's one of the reasons why I got the 8 string players. I wanted them all to be Icelandic. Það finnst mér mega alveg vera, þú veist, svona meiri, það þarf alveg bara vibrato og...
Okay.
Meira, okay. Og alveg bara, þú veist, ossalega, þú veist, Matahari. Þetta þannig við rýmur.
Her uses of intervals, for instance, fifths, and that's very traditional in Iceland and actually very unique. Icelandic folk songs often use this interval of fifths. She uses that in her pieces that makes it very Icelandic.
I wrote a song called Hunter, and it's based on what my grandmother told me on Christmas about 2 different types of birds who are birds that always have the same nest all their lives, like swans, and they always have the same partners all life. And there are birds that travel all the time, and they always have different partners all the time. And kind of like to make a conscious decision to stay a hunter. It kind of ended up being a little bit of a bolero, I guess, maybe because it's Spain.
She has an ability to make really quite difficult music appeal to your heart, and that's something to do with her voice and her nature. It's got great lyrics, you know, there's a bit on Hunter. She says, I tried to organise Friesen. How Scandinavian of me. It's like really, it's like she's chatting to you, but she just does it in this kind of really amazing, you know, Bjorkish voice.
I made a conscious choice that the beats for this album will be very simple, almost naive, but still very natural, but very explosive. Like they're still in the making, which for me is very much Iceland. So there's a lot of energy here. I wanted the beats to be like this. I find it so amazing when people tell me that electronic music has not got soul, and they blame the computers. They got their finger and point at the computer. It's like, there's no soul here. It's like, you can't blame the computer. If there's not soul in the music, it's because nobody put it there. And it's not the tool's fault.
You can't handle love, baby. You can't handle love. Oh, it's obvious you can't handle idea.
When you first meet an Icelander, sometimes they are cold. But then, when they warm up to you, they are very fiery. We are very fiery people.
Anita! Most of my work I do in my head, just when I'm doing other things. And I don't know, it's because I've been doing it for long, or because I spent so many years without recording my songs. I wasn't until 27 I started recording them. That I naturally become quite organized in my head, and they got all these different sections and little cupboards and drawers. And I start that idea and I put it in a drawer, and I can come back to it a year later and it will still be there. So I walk in a room and it looks like I'm starting a song, but it's actually, in a way, I've maybe been working on it for a year.
Er þetta ekki miklu betra?
Miklu, já. Við getum farið ennþá lengra.
Okay.
Þetta alveg bara svona sound of music.
Já, ok.
Þú veist, alveg bara svona væn. I write about one song a month. And it's usually just the theme of that month, like the soundtrack to that month in my life.
Og líka kannski hvernig við...
This is the lyric to a song about my best mate, Yoga. But all the other pages, there's absolutely no way I'll open for you, whatever you offer me, because that's so private, it's scary. And I've got a beautiful secret code, which is called Icelandic. So you guys will never find out what it says in this.
Bjork has got a lot of originality about her, I think, and partly that's to do with how she works. So she makes a record and it is a whole world that she creates, and she exists in that world and she makes that sound, and then she finishes it and she moves on and she does something else. And so each album is very, very different, and she presents each album in a different way. She gives you a gift in a different way, and quite often, when I interviewed her one time, she told me that she thought of the covers as tarot cards, and they're different representations of her on each album, and you know that you're getting something different every time. You're getting a whole world that she creates and offers to you, and that's an amazing thing.
Number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and all the way up to 73, I'm a pop musician, and I'm making music for everyone, not for VIP or educated people or something like that. So I want to make that. It has to be pop music, you know, that everybody can relate to, and so it's a challenge. It's an experiment, and I haven't got a clue. We'll work on it, but you have to try.